Hey everyone, Tony here. Sorry I'm a little late. We had somebody come to buy our riding mower today because we actually use a lawn service, and they were a little late getting here, and they drove 80 miles, and then they decided to bring a pickup truck, not a trailer, with no ramps, so it literally had to be lifted onto their truck. I don't get it. I think they're from West Virginia, which probably explains a lot, but anyway, it's good to see you all. Yeah, right. Exactly, Debbie. Smash that like button. Although that does bring me to something that I was thinking about earlier. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. I'm pretty close to 1,000, which isn't a lot, but it's one of those milestone kind of things. So if you haven't subscribed already, I know a number of you have. I just really appreciate it, just for the sake of numbers, because all of the Expert Media webinars here are posted live, and I keep those up, unlike the courses, of course. So anyhow, I have a fun training for you tonight. We're just basically going to do it as we go along, but we'll get into some of that here first. Let me go full screen here, like that. Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Expert Media Webinars. This is your host and teacher tonight, Tony Ladig. And tonight I thought it'd be fun to revisit creating photo composites. And one of the reasons why this is fresh on my mind is because it's that time of the year, the end of the year, and every year I create a fantasy illustration of all of my grandkiddos. And honestly, I've been so busy with other things that I haven't even started yet. Fortunately, we have a local photo processor, and so I can get prints and everything made in a day, actually within an hour or two. But I need to get her done. I have 5 of these things to create. So I thought that I would create one of them tonight as a demo. I haven't created it beforehand or anything like that. We're literally going to do it live. But before we get to that, I have some teaching which I thought would be a good foundation, but also if you haven't done a lot with photo compositing yet, that hopefully it'll make you curious enough to want to dig in. Some of the new tools that have even been added to Adobe Photoshop, honestly, have just made it so much easier. I was working on a book for my sister a couple weeks ago. She had painted her own book, but a kid's book for her grandson. And there were some elements. She's like, hey, I was talking about seagulls, but there are no seagulls in this painting. Do you think you could maybe take them from this one painting and add them to the other? And I said, yeah, sure, of course. I go into Photoshop, I drag a little box around them. It instantly senses where the seagulls are, drag, drop, save, like literally that fast. You wouldn't be able to do that just even a year ago. So some really cool technologies that are coming out courtesy of AI, of course. Adobe's AI is called Sensei, and they've been building it into a lot of things. And there's some new things coming related to that as well for them. But anyway, one of the things that I love about photo compositing is that when you have raw photo materials, and by photo, I don't necessarily mean photograph. Well, I probably should have said digital. But when you have raw photo materials, you can create nearly any type of image for any purpose. And there's a lot of applications. And of course, lately, I've covered a lot of these. I've taught on all of these over the last several years. But just to kind of revisit and remind, image-based, illustration-based book covers and all that implies. So whether you're talking about low content books or regular book covers or kids books or all of that, all the above, posters and canvas wraps and acrylic and metallics and all of those different ways that you can display art these days. Web design and all of its forms and glory. NFTs, of course, which is what we're talking about right now on Thursdays. Man, there's so much you can do with photo composites. I'll mention this on Thursday during the course, but there is probably, Lord, I don't even know, 5 or 6 different collections that I've been working on. And some of them are done, just ready to go. I just haven't gotten them uploaded yet. But and they're all over the place, from traditionally illustrated to digital art to AI generated to photo composites, all the above. And of course, much more. There's always new ways to use photo composite methods. Like, for instance, this is one of my banners for, I think this is my collection image for on OpenSea for my bear NFTs. And you can see pretty easily that it's just a simple photo composite. I had 2 of my bear images that I put next to each other, and then I put a colored overlay on top of those, and then a really cool geometric graphic on top of that, and then my bear head logo on top of that. Simple photo composite. It took me just a couple minutes. Honestly, it took me longer to find the right clip art overlay than it did for me to create the entire image, which is usually how it goes. For tonight's case study, I already put in that time, and it took me a while, honestly, to pick the images I wanted to create the effect I was thinking about for my grandson. So from a planning perspective, there's a number of essential elements for creating photo composites, including, look at that, I duplicated myself. Quality photos. So always a good idea to have the images that you're using be at least at the resolution that you're creating at or higher. Now, you can achieve that in some cases through upresing, upscaling, and there's a lot of great AI-based options now. But you want quality. And the reason why, now I'm incredibly OCD, so maybe this isn't as much an issue for you, but one of the things that I pay attention to, and I don't think I have it on this list. No, it doesn't look like it, but like even grain, something doesn't have any grain, and then here's this other image that does have grain. It's an obvious mismatch. Composition is another one, which, chances are likely if you're creating a composite of some sort, you already have an idea of where you want to go. It's kind of like a rough sketch or storyboard or something, so that the composition is balanced. And I've taught on that before. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail tonight as far as what that means. White balance, same with, especially if you're using multiple images together and one image has more of a cool effect and the others are more warm, which means it's stronger in like oranges and yellows and all of that. They're not going to look right together, so you'll have to make adjustments for that. Same with light direction. This is something that you may not think of, but like if you have one photo and it's obvious that the sun is shining from the right, and then you have another photo and the sun is shining from the left, it's going to look odd, if you composite those together. Point of view is another one that could be faked these days with a lot of filters. You can make adjustments to that, but still, if you have a number of photographs, perhaps for a composite, that it looks like they were taken head on, right? Like maybe at a camera height of say 5 or 6 feet, like a person was standing taking it, and then you're compositing them into an image that was obviously taken by a drone. So it's a much higher, maybe 200 feet looking down. It's going to, again, look kind of wonky. If there's some situations where you can get away with that, but not many. Same with field of view. Field of view is basically like, let's say, I don't want to get into a lot of the technicals of shooting photos, but let's say you're taking a picture with a telephoto lens, and the field of view is maybe, say, 20 degrees, and then you're shooting with a wide angle lens and the field of view is maybe 115 degrees. Um, Putting those two together can be a little challenging from a composite perspective, because telephotos, the more narrow the field of view is, the more space is collapsed versus expanded with wide angles. So another thing just to keep in mind. Depth of field is another thing. So the amount of what is in focus in an image front to back is a very brief description of depth of field. Hard edges versus soft edges. That especially comes into play with compositing. And you'll see when we get into the case study how in reality, in the real world, we may see things as having hard images. But when we're compositing things together, in most cases, a soft edge is better. And by soft, I don't necessarily mean soft by a lot. It could be like 1%. Okay, but it will make a difference, and I'll show you that. Shadows goes along with light direction. If everything has a shadow cast to it, and then you pop some person into a scene you don't have a shadow, it's going to look weird. So it's just, again, another one of those things that you want to pay attention to. And then tonal range. So tonal range goes together with white balance. Typically, when you're working in an image editor or whatever, you see they'll refer to tonal range as tint. So it's like yellow versus blue, green versus magenta. And so it's really just a matter of adjusting everything so that it all kind of matches. It sounds like a lot. It really isn't. All of this stuff that you see here can be adjusted probably in a matter of a minute or two. So it's not that big of a thing, right? It's something to pay attention to. And the more compositing you do, the more you'll go, oh, okay, that's what Tony meant, right? And some of you probably have been doing some compositing already, because I've talked about it for a few years now. And actually, as I mentioned in my email, I started building photo composites back in 1993 when I first started in book design, and it was a lot harder back then because Photoshop hadn't developed layers yet. And so I would have to save multiple iterations every step of the way in creating a cover design or something, just so that if the publisher or the author wanted to make a change, I'd have to have some place to go back to, and then whenever they release level or layers, which I think was in version 3, which is a major overhaul of Photoshop. Man, that was a game changer. I was like ready to worship at their feet, just because it's like, holy cow, man, it made everything so much easier. Lori says, minute for you, hour for me. Maybe not. It seems like magic until you understand the secret. And I think the same is true with working in image editing programs, whether you use Photoshop or Affinity Photo or Corel Draw or whatever, Corel Photo, whatever it's called. Once you figure out those basics, then it's like, oh, this actually isn't that hard. And I've seen so many people, have that aha experience. Now, when you're creating a composite, you can pull from many different types of resources to create your final result. And that can include photographs, whether they're ones you take or they're stock images, existing illustrations like paintings or whatever, digital art, public domain, of course. I'd be remiss to not mention that. Again, whether it's illustrations or photographs like on Pixabay or whatever the case may be. AI generated, of course, we focused a lot on that this year, and it's just getting better and better all the time. Images, which 3D is something that I really wanted to get to this year, and we're running out of time, we're at December 14th. But I am planning on teaching about 3D next year. what I was actually waiting on was for DAZ 3D, which is one of the programs that I use and very user friendly. They whenever Mac, the OS updated, not to the latest version, but the version before Big Sur, I guess. There were some compatibility issues with DAZ 3D, and so it didn't run. And so they had to update it, which they just did about a month and a half or so ago. And so now it works fine. But so that's what I was waiting on. But by then, you know, we were hard and heavy into the AI stuff. So I'll be talking about that next year because it can really help you create things that otherwise would be challenging. And then, of course, sculpted or created models. You know, I've done things with the Viking Kids and with some other toys with the dragon sculptures that we had commissioned. There's a lot of things like that that you can use. And so, like, here's a really good example. This image that I created for my grandson, same grandson that we're going to focus on tonight. This image I did a couple years ago, and the background is a photograph. His body and his face and everything are photographs. The dinosaurs are all 3D renders that I had done in DAZ 3D. And then it was all composited together in Photoshop and, you know, run through paint filters and all of that. So I thought that was a good example. So attention to detail really is key because to me, there's nothing more gratifying, especially when you're creating illustrative art like we saw on the previous page. Nothing more gratifying than to hear somebody say, "How in the world did you do that?" You know, and I enjoy that. I remember the first illustration that I did of Maya was of her as a princess, and it was funny when she saw the picture. She remembered when that picture was taken, which was cute. I mean, she wasn't that old whenever I did that, like 4 or 5, but she said that she had remembered that, and obviously, you know, she didn't, but it was still cute. So when it comes to silhouetting, there's always some fudge room because, and I've said this many times, whenever you're working with photo to art software, like from Jixi Pix, like Impresso or Pastello or whatever, I always say that it hides a multitude of sins, because it really does. The way it blends things together, in many cases, the silhouetting process doesn't have to be perfect. The only exception is faces. And with faces, the secret to getting those right is to make sure that you match the angle, the tilt, lighting, contrast, all of those things. Because as humans, we're trained to notice faces more than anything else, especially when it comes to other people. And so, you know, you could have every other scene element that there is in a composite maybe be a little bit off kilter or whatever, and people won't really notice. You get a face wrong, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. It's just how our eye is drawn. And so what I always do is layer in the face, because you've done the edited art conversion, especially with the Jixi Pix products, which, by the way, they're doing their Christmas countdown right now. So every day they have a different product that's either free or on sale. So you want to pay attention. If you're not on their mailing list, you want to check that out if you don't already own those, which you should. But always layer in the face, especially the eyes, after the illustration conversion is done, because it helps pop the detail. And I'll be demonstrating that in the case study. And then with the software, of course, I always use Photoshop, and I'm going to use it for the demo tonight. But Affinity Photo, I'll tell you what, great program, $50. It was on sale over Thanksgiving, Black Friday. I don't know if they'll do that again before the end of the year, but I think it was like 30% off or something like that, which is, I mean, the regular price I think is very inexpensive for what it does, but a really good option. And there are others, of course. And then my personal favorite photo art software, which you guys already know, Jixie Pix products, #1 in my book. I use them all the time. Topaz Studio 2, I'm also using a lot, especially these days. The bear NFT art that I've been creating, part of my creative process in that is to run it through one of the filters in Topaz Studio 2 called Melting. And Acvis products, I have several of these that I still use on occasion, especially Sketch is probably my favorite. But they have, Lord, 10 or 12 now. Okay, there you go. Information on Affinity. And then Paint, which is a style transfer program, probably my favorite, although Photoshop offers that as well now as part of their Neural filters. And there's others like Night Cafe and some of them. But anyway, and so like here you'll see my moon goddess image I've done. And it's obviously a photo composite of a render out of Artbreeder, and then a lot of her hair is hand painted in using specialty brushes in Photoshop. There are obviously a graphical type image composited over top, and then all of that is over top of the moon, and then the stars in the sky and everything was created using like a star field generator. And then the entire process was run through Impresso, looks like. It's been a while since I created this one. Through Impresso. And then there was an overlay used to help re-enhance her eyes and her eyelashes again, and to give a little more definition to her lips. Okay. This has actually been, these series has actually been selling half decent in our store, which is awesome. This is, I probably have sold the most of, and it's my personal favorite, but some of the others have sold as well. All right, so I went through those kind of quickly, but that's partly because I wasn't sure how long it was going to take me to do this composite. So what we're going to do, these are the core elements that we're going to use to create our composite tonight. I wanted kind of a creepy looking background because we're kind of going for a direwolf type of deal. These are 3D generated, but I didn't generate them myself. I just bought them off of Adobe stock. And then we have this kid here, which I thought would be a good base image. His hair's a little lighter, but that's not a big deal. The sun position is a little bit different, but it's pretty close to Wyatt's, but Wyatt has stronger shadows. And that's a pretty easy fix, actually. So this is where we're going to end up. You'll notice that the color matches are all off by a lot. And yeah, let's see where we end up. Even like the shadowing on the wolves here is a little bit different, but I don't think it'll make that much of a difference once we get into it. So I'm going to grab a drink here real quick. And partly because I forgot my water. And it's nice to have a refrigerator right next to my desk. You gotta love caffeine stevia. I wouldn't say that it's good for you, but it's not bad for you. All right. So, Jessica, I'm not sure. It's been a while since I used the one that I have and everything. I have it set. I think I have it set up as a plugin for Photoshop. But I'll go back after class and look that up, and I can let you know. I'll post it in a comment below this video or something like that. All right, so we need Photoshop. I have only a couple folders on my desktop right now. All right, so you kind of see what I've been playing around with lately. Tell you the downside of, well, I wouldn't see it as a downside, but setting up multiple NFT marketplaces just takes time because they all use different size graphics and stuff. All right, so I need this picture. And I think everything else is in the downloads. This one, and this one. Okay, so my normally whenever I generate these, I go for 11 by 14 at 300 dots per inch. WS, why aren't you using your Photoshop offline folders? I just use my desktop. I'm not that tech savvy. Well, actually, I am that tech savvy. Maybe I'm just lazy. I don't know. You ask me these hard questions. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. So this is actually to this that I need. So I'm just going to resample it slightly. And then we're going to crop it. So if you have a foundational image that you want to work with, it's a good idea to set that to your final trim size, whatever that is, which in this case, I'm going for 11 by 14. There we are. You have nothing to apologize for, Debbie. Yeah, and so now I need to decide. I think we're going to go with that arrangement because, you know, if you follow the rule of thirds, which you can see here in the crop, that puts the main actor action or whatever right on that vertical meridian there, which is perfect because I'm not going to be able to do anything in front of the trees and I don't want to, but that'll work. The other thing, I'm trying to debate whether I want these big trees on the left or the right. I think I'm going to flip it. So flip canvas horizontally. I reserve the right to change my mind on that. All right. So what I usually like to do is just kind of drag everything in there and then kind of work from there, piece at a time. So the first thing we need to do is get this guy. So we have like the magnetic lasso tool we could use. We've got magic wand and quick selection. But this newer object selection tool, I don't know if you guys have ever used this. This very often is enough to get the job done. So I'm going to choose that. and then just kind of draw a box around the kid here and release. Boom. The only thing that it didn't get is like these little enclosed areas. We can use magic wand for that. Whoops. Actually, we need to subtract. And I think everything else I'm going to live and let live for now. So I can copy this and paste him in. Now he's too big, but you'll notice the silhouette isn't bad, right? It's not bad at all. I'm going to leave him a little bit bigger than what I'm ultimately going to need him to be. One other thing that you can do, by the way, you'll notice that there's a little bit of fringe here. And sometimes, not every time, they keep moving this particular tool. Defringe. Maybe it's under here. There it is. If we do this maybe 2 pixels, it gets rid of some of it. As far as light direction, Debbie, that's actually one of the reasons why I picked this image, is because the light is very muted because of the fog. But in reality, the light, the source of light is to the left, and in his image, it's to the right. So we're going to flip him as well. And you just beat me to it. And we're going to need to tone him down and all of that as well. All right. I don't normally use select object. I guess we could, just for the sake of showing a different way of doing it. It's basically the same thing as the other tool that I showed, but you can see just by going to, as Nancy mentioned, select subject, in this case, it automatically knew that these guys were the subjects. And so then I can copy those and paste them in here as well. And it did a pretty decent job, even with the fur, actually. Nice puppies. Now you'll notice that the light direction isn't perfect with these compared to the kid. And, you know, I honestly don't think my grandson will care. I will, but you know how it can go. So I think we're going to keep these boys pretty big. They're kind of like dire wolves, at least in my head. And so last but not least, I'm going to close these. And by the way, I do want to point out, you notice how fast it was for us to be able to select these things here in Photoshop? It's just crazy compared to how it was even a couple years ago. So last but not least, we have my grandson, and I don't know. It's a pretty busy image, so I don't know if object release will, or select, will work on him. Maybe, not bad. Just a little small. his head. So we're going to scale up just because at the end of the day, it isn't going to matter too much. Okay. Now, I don't think the other wolf had a tail showing. What is the number of this one? 438. Oh, of course, I guess the wrong one. Uh, 438, 504. Oh, did it miss that part? Yes, it did. Okay. So, thanks for pointing that out. Honestly, I didn't even know. Now, you'll notice here with that particular version, it actually didn't give us as clean of a silhouette as the other one did. Let me try. If at first you don't succeed, crop the image. There it got his tail. All right. Thanks for pointing that out. I would have noticed it later, and then, it'd have been like, damn it. So you just saved me anxiety. And actually, the good part about doing it this way is that each of the wolves will be separate. And okay. So now it comes down to, like, what I like to do first is start to build out the composition a little bit, and kind of like rough in where I'm heading before I start making a lot of the changes and everything. Debbie says, use your rulers. I don't necessarily need to right now. All right. So what I'm going to have to do ultimately with this wolf, like, I want him to be in front of the kid, but his tail go behind. So actually, I think I'm going to move him up like this. And then as far as his tail goes, I can mask that out. Oh, to size the head. It's all good. All right. So here we are. We have a basic composition here other than the disembodied head of my grandson. So that's not good. But there's some adjustments that we need to make here, obviously. So first thing that I want to do, we need to color match this a little bit more. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is by sampling the fog, because that kind of set a precedence. Actually, we're going to sample maybe one of the lighter trees in the fog, because in that situation, I can create a color overlay that I can then use to control these images and their tonality. Now, right now, it is also affecting our background, and I understand that. But just for the sake of preliminary discussions, we are going to create a mask. And so now we can, and all that I did was command clicked and command shift clicked these three items so that they would be a joint selection, and then clicked on the mask button. Okay, so now the only thing that this layer is controlling is the overlay of our friends here. And I can choose how little or how much they influence the scene here. And I think for right now, I'm going to go with maybe that amount because the kid looks pretty good, but the wolves I would probably like to see a little bit more shifted. Another way that we can do that, in other words, changing color dynamics, is through using Command B, which is color balance. So I could go in with these dogs here and shift their coloration. Something like that, perhaps. 3511 minus 11 minus 27. $35. Okay. So I kind of feel like we're getting closer. We're going to play a little bit more with the kid here. Kind of redden. Is that a word? Because see, now I can globally bring this up a little bit more. Because I don't want it fully monochromatic, but I do want to have a little bit of the monochromatic. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the checkerboard. I think they are distracting, Tom. My personal opinion. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is, and I realize this still isn't perfect. Reddened, Debbie. I don't know if that's a word or not. It's been a long ass day, honestly. You can see whenever we zoom in that there's still like some resolution issues here a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier about grain. You can see like there's some imperfections around his legs here, and we may change that a little bit. And even like you can see a little bit of the dark from the silhouette of the wolf. A lot of this is all going to go away whenever we convert it into an illustration. Okay, so that's why I'm not being super critical. But for the kid's face, we have a lot of work to do. So first up, I want to make sure. Well, first thing I need to do is flip my grandson's face. But I want to make sure that it's mostly the same size. Flip so that the colors are closer. And it looks like there's a slight tilt. But overall, it's not bad. Okay. So the next thing comes in with, how much of my grandson's image do I use? Like, that's the question. And you can see I'm moving this, but the reason why is because of the kid's ears there. But um, actually, I think I went a little bit too far, and I probably need to. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is fix this tonality because it is about as far off as we can get. Um, so to do that, we're going to start off with shadows and highlights, maybe. Um, that way we can lighten the dark areas, but not really touch the highlights too much. And then levels will get us there a little bit closer. Um, and another thing we're going to do is with hue and saturation, I'm going to cut his saturation down just a little. Actually, I'm going to work on him above the coloration. So right now, this is where we are. The easiest way to work on a silhouette like this is to use a mask. That way, if you delete something, you can always paint it back. Okay. I think 47% or 47 pixel brush, give or take, is going to be fine. When it comes to this kind of silhouetting, I'm usually at about a hardness of 75 or so. That way it isn't giving me a sharp edge. There's a little bit of softness, but not super softness. Okay. So like if I come in here, and just start erasing like my grandson's neck in favor of the kid's neck. And you can see I have a little of the other kid's chin. So I'll just kind of bump my grandson down a little bit. Which, for those of you who don't know, this is Wyatt. Everybody, Wyatt, everybody. All right. Let's just kind of clean that a little bit. Okay. So all in all, not a bad color adjustment, actually, for just kind of winging it. So the next step is to find my cursor again. So the next step is to see where we're going to land in the grand scheme of hair and hat. Okay. So I'm just going to delete or mask out what I need to here initially just to kind of find out where everything is supposed to land, because I can always go back and paint it back in. All right. So let's switch over here to the white. Now you notice that there is a shadow that's being cast. So I would probably want to put that back in. And one way we can do that is through the burn tool. Maybe. Just kind of darken his hair right in that general area. Now, you'll notice that another issue that we have here is the kid behind us. A little bit of his ear and hair is showing up there. So the easiest way, again, to fix that is through masking. So I can just come in here and make sure it's set to black. Well, don't want to cut the hat off. Just that little piece right there. So all in all, not horrible so far. Actually, it's going a little bit easier than I thought. Well, I can't do that completely, Debbie, because I want the kid's hat. We definitely need the hat. Okay, now we have another issue, and that goes back to tonality. Okay, in this case, I'm going to duplicate Wyatt's head and move it clear to the bottom out of the way and turn it off. In this case, it's just a backup because what I want to do is apply the mask. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that I can add to this mask right here. So like if I scroll down and put his head on top of the other one, he's being falsely colorized because he's not fully a part of that mask. So I'm going to command click him, come up here to the mask, and then fill with the white. Okay. So now let's back out. Now I can adjust the color a little bit better with him. Because I want the color to affect his image. It needs to, but maybe not quite as strong as I was before. Maybe that. Now the wolves, I definitely want to go even darker with the coloration. And so what I'm going to do is duplicate that layer, remove the layer mask, and then command click the two wolves. So now this mask will only affect the wolves more. So I can actually like increase this, and maybe I don't even want to do color. Maybe multiply makes more sense, which actually I kind of like that. I noticed somebody, Debbie, mentioned about glowing eyes. I like that idea. I may do that. Okay, so what do we have next? So one thing that I think I'm going to do is duplicate the layer of the boy and my grandson's head and merge those two layers together so that it's just one unit. And then I can turn that off as well. And the reason why I decided to do that is that it'll make it easier to do the next step, which is create a mask on the wolf's tail, which actually I don't need it there. I need a mask there. So I'm going to select Wyatt, and then with the selection still running, I can just mask out this part of the tail, because I still want the wolf's paw to be in front of the shoe, but not the tail. Okay, like so. Now that we're zoomed in, I think it would be a good time to fix some of these other problems, which in this case, I'm just going to use the eraser tool. And just kind of clean up around this shoe a bit. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, because once we convert it to photo or to art, you won't see any of this. But like right here, we'll just kind of clean out some of those awkward white spots. Let's see, get this section here real quick. Sometimes doing this level of silhouetting can be easier whenever you're using a tablet. I don't have mine hooked up right now. Okay, so another thing that we need here is right now we don't have like the wolves or Wyatt casting any kind of shadows or anything. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer here and set it to multiply. And get a nice and we want to go soft on this. And so what we're going to do is just kind of paint with the right color. Just kind of paint where a shadow would most likely show up. And we'll address the rock here in a minute. And so now we can just bring this down to like that looks good. And let's see, with the stone, in this case, we're just going to paint it right in on the image. I'm going to lock the layer so that we can only paint on the parts that matter. And so like if I just kind of turn that back a little bit, you kind of get the idea. And actually, I may want to just darken the whole thing a little bit more. So we're getting close. We're getting closer. one thing that I think I still want to do with the wolves, I want to experiment a little bit with adjustment layers for shadows and highlights, so that I can balance them out a little bit more. You can see the before and after. And so this is 49 and 19. So I'm going to further adjust them with levels here in just a minute. In a minute. Now, we will adjust them this way. And then the rock kind of looks goofy now since we made that adjustment. But I want actually, I think that can go a little bit darker, actually. And then I'm just going to use burn to get the rock down to where it should be. Image burn. You know, and if we wanted to emphasize the wolves' faces a little bit more, we can like kind of just dodge them out a little bit, like just to accentuate their eyes a little more. Now remember, some of this detail is all going to go away as we convert this into an illustration. That's actually a good idea, Debbie, but I don't know that. I have to go back and the other versions of this kid, the image that I used to see if there was another thing. I may revisit that at some point, but at this stage, I'm not sure. Now, I don't know that this is 100% quite where I have it. Probably a good idea or where I want to have it. We're going to hit save, but I also don't want to keep you all night. So call this Wyatt 2021, and I'll reserve the right to make changes if I wish, but I'm just going to keep going. I probably could make some more adjustments to his face. Let me show you one way. Mary mentioned tints. So let me show you a way that you can actually do that. Now that I have the kid composited together. You can see the grain differences here between the wolves. And like some of this dark area around the fur, at the end of the day, that's not going to matter at all. But Wyatt's face looks a little bit more washed out than what the kid's face was because of how much we had to adjust it. So if I like eyedropper, maybe like his chest here, and then I'm going to do this as a new layer rather than right on him. But I want to choose color. The opacity, that should be fine for now. Actually, I'm going to set the opacity to 100% just so I can see what's going on. And we'll make that did not achieve what I wanted. So I'm going to paint right on the kid. And let's see what happens there. What you don't want to have happen is get into a situation where you do something and you can't take it back. Yeah, and that's actually making him even more red, or yellow, which I don't like. So we may have to do a custom color. That's a little bit better, a little closer. I'm going to lock this layer, go with a little more intensity and a smaller brush because I don't want it to affect his eyes. Right idea, right direction. Little softer. A little bit better, right? So let me save here. And what I'm going to do, what am I going to do? I'm going to make a copy of all of these. And then merge them. And then turn all of these off. And the reason why I had some is just because I'm weird. We can create a group from layers and call this original and then turn that off. The reason why is because whenever we convert all of this to a painting, I need to have a copy of just the my grandson and the wolves to add some detail back in, and you'll see that here in just a minute. So I'm going to turn that off, turn these on. and make a second copy. Wait. Debbie says, you're already an hour in and you're not done yet. Technically, that's not true because I didn't start actually creating this until a little bit later. But in my defense, I normally take 6 to 8 hours to create these. So I'm not complaining too much. All right. So now we have a composite of everything and just the main characters by themselves. So what I'm going to do is use this copy to come up to Filter, JixiePix, Impresso. And actually, Wyatt has his own preset in here somewhere, I think. Yeah, right here. I don't know if this is the one that I'll use. I kind of like this one, the one that I've been using with the Accomplice stuff. So now you can see if I zoom in here, I've lost a lot of detail, right? And that, my friends, is where this layer comes in. Because I can change the opacity. Whoops. Let's pick the right layer. I can change the opacity of this to like 35. And you can see his eyes are clear again. So it helps bring back some of the detail. And I can choose to only have that detail where I want it. So, you know, again, back to masking, you probably notice that I do a lot of masking. And so then I can just kind of paint in larger swaths because, you know, I don't really need a lot of detail in his hat or any of that, or for that matter, even, you know, really in his shirt or anything. I can probably go with a bigger brush. Maybe leave a little bit of definition for the ears. And their faces, obviously. Kind of looks like I'm all over the place. So the rest of this, I'm just going to mask out because we don't need any detail in here at all. Just for their faces, really. Oh, I'm at 80%. That's weird. Don't know why that is. So now, if we zoom in here, you can see the difference that that layer makes. in adding definition to the eyes, right? It's all about the eyes. And if I wanted to bring out more definition, say like in the binoculars there, I could go back to the white and, just kind of do a quick swath down there just to add some of the detail, or I could even switch over to a gray so that it doesn't bring in as much, but more than if I just used the white. So just a little bit of detail there. Funny, Gary. And so it's getting there, right? And so then the last thing here is that I would want to do any final touches or adjustments or anything like that. And we can do that using adjustment layers, right? So like, let's say I just wanted to overall darkening a little bit. I could come up here, put an adjustment layer for levels, and then just kind of globally tweak that down. Or I could still mask them out if I wanted to. Like if I didn't want to affect the background, but them, I can do that with just adding a mask. If I want to, say, make a little bit more of an adjustment to the colors, I can do that with color balance. And so, make it a little more red perhaps. So that's where I would make those adjustments. And it does make a difference, you can see, you know. And I think, like, just to kind of, for grins and giggles here, because we have that comes in handy. If I inverse this and then fill this with a gray, what it does is it darkens them more than the background. So it's darkening the background a little bit. It's darkening them a lot more. So you can see, like, it can help rebalance out some of the tonal discrepancies, which in my opinion aren't that big of a deal, but you get the idea. So there you have it. And the good news is that we have all the bits and bobs and pieces here, so that if I wanted to or needed to be able to go back and make additional adjustments to this, I still can. Maybe it's a bit of a bad habit just from back in the pre-layers days, which has been a really long time. But I like having the ability to go in and control things even more. But whenever you think about where we started to where we are, I think it turned out pretty cool. So I'm going to save that, free up some memory, and then make a flattened version of it. Okay, anybody have any comments or questions? Honestly, I kind of like how it turned out. I don't know that I'll make any major tweaks to it, if any. Simple. Some of the other ones that I have to create in my other grandkiddos, they all got to request what they wanted to be. Some of them aren't going to be as easy. Lily wants to be Rapunzel with her hair coming down a castle tower, that kind of thing. And my daughter Courtney mentioned for Charlie Bear to have him as the conductor of an orchestra. and I forget what Maya usually gravitates toward fashion design somehow or another. Christopher, I don't recall right now. Marius, what are some of the things that kids say when they see their pictures? They're pretty amazed, especially um, last year was super cool because I didn't do individual images last year. I did family images. So, like, for my daughter Courtney, all three kiddos were in one picture, and my daughter Ashley, her two kids were in one. So I did like these. I don't know if you remember them, like these landscape type pictures. So Courtney's children were in like this winter scene with animals all around, and Ashley's uh, children were in a forest kind of scene. And then I took those two illustrations together with all the previous that I created and published them into a hardback book. And the book is awesome. But I didn't want to do a book a year, because that would get to be a lot. But they also don't have a lot of room wall space to hang all of these pictures either. So trying to decide how to handle them and all of that, can be a little challenging, I guess. But I'm probably going to do a book again in another year or two, just because I think, it'd be cool for them to flip through it. But um, sometimes I think that the kids really, it sparks their imagination, and now they know to expect them. Because I've been doing these for 5 years now, I think, and so now I guess it's kind of a little bit of a legacy thing for them now. It's something that um, Pappy created for them that you can't just go to a store and buy. So I'd like to believe that when they're adults and have their own children, that they'll be able to open up those books and show their children, what I created for them. I'm very sentimental when it comes to stuff like that. Yeah, digital picture frame isn't a bad idea, Alex. Actually, I really like that idea. I never even thought about that for them. Um, I've been thinking about it for NFTs, oddly enough, but not for them. But that might actually be cool, just to take the digital versions of the family's paintings that I do and have them set on rotate. I like that idea. Thanks for suggesting that. I may actually do that for them for Christmas this year. That's cool. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Sally. That's a really good point about how the blue emphasizes the genes rather than the boy. I think probably the easiest solution would be the one that you mentioned about maybe a blue hat. That's a good idea. And actually, that wouldn't be that hard to fix, because I could sample like that blue right there, even with this final image. I may be able to do it with this image. It may not look right, but we'll give her a whirl. Well, if I actually have settings right. I'm going to do it like this just to see how much of a difference it would make. And then I'll probably go back and do it before the conversion process. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and even, I wonder, like, readjusting the color of his sleeve here. That way it creates a color visual cue that helps direct your eye. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I like that. So probably I think what I'm going to do rather than handle it this way is go back to the unflattened version and make those adjustments before it's converted into a painting. That way it'll blend together much better. But thanks for the suggestion. I really like that, Sally. Thank you. So for now, we'll go with that. Any other comments or questions? I really appreciate your input. It's helpful. Whenever I have start working on the other four, y'all can come over and we'll hang out and you can watch over my shoulder. Yeah, I'll tell you what though, you figure that with Wyatt, we started here, which these photos were just taken last week, I think. But we started here, and you compare that with his face here. That's the beauty of your adjustments. You know how you can really adjust things to match tonal range and all of that kind of stuff. So very cool. So this went a little longer than I normally prefer to on these, but hey, I mean, I think we got something done, and you guys really gave me some great pointers and feedback, and I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I'm not ready to NFT my grandkids yet, Gary, but it's not out of the equation. Perhaps at some point, maybe just a private mint. I'm actually even entertaining the idea of selling some of my courses next year, access to some of my courses next year as NFTs. I'm just kind of starting to think through that process. And you'd still be able to buy them with like PayPal or credit card or whatever, but NFT folks who bought them that way would get additional perks. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm thinking about it. NFTs are the future in a lot of ways, I believe. So we'll see. And Val is here. That message is Val. So thank you, Val. She said, love Wyatt's picture. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining me here tonight. That's all that I have. We accomplished everything that I hoped to and more. So thank you very much. For those of you who are in the NFT class, we are going to continue with Module 2 on Thursday and get into some of the art creation and everything. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to do this too tonight is to stir up your creative juices for Thursday. One other thing that I want to mention just popped back in my mind. A couple of you, several of you actually, asked whether or not I was going to be offering all of my courses next year for one low price. And initially I had decided that was pretty much a hard no. But with some of the additional feedback that I've gotten regarding that, I'm reconsidering my hard no. So I may still do that. I just haven't decided yet. I pulled up the sales page and all of that today that I used last year. So I may, for those of you who want to just get it all done with and out of the way at the beginning of the year, well, the end of this year, there may be an option for that. For those of you who want to not necessarily own them all, you can still buy them individually. The courses, that is, for next year. I am planning on teaching. We have 2 more NFT courses planned that'll be more advanced, like how to build a community and get in social media and create buzz and all of that kind of stuff. and some of the more technical aspects of other platforms and those types of things, and bringing crypto into it all. Chris and I are planning on co-teaching those together next year. I'm looking at more AI, of course, because there's some new things in the pipeline that you probably don't know about yet. And 3D, we're going to dig into 3D some next year. And who knows? We'll see. So anyway, there are 2 new products that are going to be coming out yet this year. One is on AI audio, which I'm really excited. I'm not teaching it live, but it's going to be awesome. And a second one on art prints. It'll be a smaller kind of thing, but different kinds of art prints and how to display your art, and some of the new services that I've been experimenting with and all of that. So that's what's coming in the remainder of this year. But I'll keep you updated with all of that. So for those of you who are going to show up on Thursday, I'll see you then. If you're not in Thursday's class, I will see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. All right. So good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk again soon.